As you know, the purpose and the motto of the American Veterans Center is bringing the legacy of the greatest generation to the latest generation. And our first session this morning, we are going to be amazed with the story and the legacy of the Montford Point Marines. In particular, we also have very special guests this morning, which is the Montford Point Young Marines. Could you all stand up so that we could see you here bringing this legacy on? Thank you so much for what you take forward, and that's really what the AVC and this conference is all about. So we welcome the Montford Point Marines, and we look forward to hearing the blessing of the history of your legacy. Thank you so much.
Good morning. My name is Gunny Sergeant Everett Wills. I'm here today with two of my good friends who happen to be original Montford Point Marines. I'm sure you're all asking, well, what is a Montford Point Marine? A Marine is a Marine. That's how we see it nowadays. But back in 1941, Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed an executive order stating that all branches of service must integrate. The Marine Corps happened to be the last branch of service to integrate. So in 1942, August 26th of 1942, African-American recruits landed on this isolated parcel of land known as Montford Point, Jacksonville, North Carolina. This was a makeshift camp, and I don't know if anybody ever been to North Carolina, Camp Lejeune, or Paris Island. It's not a pretty sight in the summertime. Hot. They got these little bugs called sand fleas, bite like a lion, you know. So I'm going to be brief, be short. We're going to show a short video, two videos of, to give you a history and an idea as to what these gentlemen went through in order to become Marines. Then we'll look at one more quick clip. It's about a minute and a half that happened this past June, and these two gentlemen were a part of. Travis?
The spirit of our Corps, embodied in the eagle, globe, and anchor, lives within the soul of every Marine. This spirit is born through arduous rite of passage at boot camp and officer training, after which a young man or woman is called a United States Marine for the first time. Our ethos has been shaped by ordinary men and women, patriots who showed extraordinary leadership and courage, both physical and moral.
From 1942 to 1949, approximately 20,000 African-American men enlisted in the Marine Corps at a time when our nation was at war and the country and military services were resistant to integration. They came from the North and from the South, from all walks of life. They came for different reasons. Some wanted the challenge of being a Marine, some wanted to earn a living, but all came to protect and serve their country honorably. They arrived on a rugged and heavily wooded 5.5-acre site near Jacksonville, North Carolina, called Montford Point. The first group of these pioneering Marines built the now famous camp of wooden huts. Others that followed fell in on their handiwork. They braved a variety of threats, everything from the swagger sticks of tough drill instructors to the snakes and the mosquitoes, and even those bears that inhabited the land. In many cases, they were challenged harder than their white counterparts, entering the Corps at the same time.
These brave Marines served with honor during a critical period in our nation's history, fighting in some of the bloodiest struggles in the Pacific, Saipan, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa. Some died in these epic island battles. Many others continued their service in the colds of Korea and the jungles of Vietnam. Many Montford Point veterans, men like Gilbert Hashmark Johnson, Edgar Huff, and Frederick C. Branch, are now legends in the rich history of the Marine Corps.
In June of 1942, I saw a newspaper article to the effect that the Marine Corps had begun accepting Negroes for service with the Corps.
Well, you know, you can't think of being a Marine without thinking about the Montford Pointers, because they are the beginning. You often question yourself, could I have done that? Could I have had the perseverance to come and to join an organization, first, that didn't want you, two, that had the history of being the last service to integration?
The Marine Corps, basically, in the early days, were looking for the best black men that they could find. Four corners of the country. We had men coming in who had their degrees. Some had broke their degrees and had a couple of years in vocation. We call them the mighty platoon.
We knew we were being trained harder, and of course the DIs would tell us that you know, they're going to make us superior to all of the other white Marines, particularly. In fact, as a matter of fact, we were breaking every record that they ever had because they pushed us to the end of that endurance to where we just couldn't go any further.
You think about where they came and why they came. Many of them were doing just fine where they are. Some were educators, some were professional ball players, some even owned their own business. Some were farmers, and some were just working in factories. But they came because they felt in their heart of hearts that our nation needed their support, needed them to be a part of what was good about America. And a lot of them felt that when they came, when they provided their contributions, that somehow that they would convince the world as well as America that they had earned the right to all of the rights and privileges there are of being Americans.
I went in late enough, and we had all white officers, but we had black drill instructors.
Hashmark Johnson was much older than we were. He had spent about 3 tours in the Army, and he came and he had about 2 tours in the Navy, and that's how he got to be called Hashmark. He got to serve here, earned service stripes. So he had about 3 of them, I think.
Hashmark was a very strong disciplinarian. In contrast, Huff was about twice the size of Hashmark, and Huff was a big guy. And whereas Hashmark would issue stern disciplinary kinds of orders, Huff would walk up to you softly and knock you on the deck if you didn't comply.
I left home to join the Marine Corps, and when I joined the Marine Corps, when I got to Montford Point, I had 25 cents in my pocket. That's all I had. And the last suit, I had it on, and I came in the Marine Corps to stay.
Huff was strictly one on the DI. He was a tough guy, tall, big, and strong. And so when he spoke to you, you moved. You didn't dare say anything because, you know, like I said, you were at his mercy. As I said, they could do anything they wanted to do, and they did.
The Marine Corps today is much better than it was for the minority. I see sergeants, majors, I see generals, colonels. When I got out of the Marine Corps, there was only one lieutenant.
Remember when they came in, there was no black officers at all. Matter of fact, when Fred Branch in 1945 was the first African-American commissioned, one of the stipulations that he had to come from the Montford Point Marines.
But I always look at the photograph of Fred receiving his second lieutenant commission, the big smile on his face and his lovely lady beside him. I have a pretty good idea what Fred went through, but I have no idea what his personal experiences were. Given the times, I just have to assume that Fred caught hell.
Now we've got generals with 3 stars, so that's a big change. And then myself, when I went as a private, I never had any concept that we'd ever have a black officer, and yet I became one of them.
There's no question. Especially after I had an opportunity to meet them and become a part of them and be mentored by them, that when you listen to their stories of their struggles and the things that they did, and more particularly the things that they did to overcome adversity, they were all tools that I put in my kit bag. And as I came up, as I matured through the Marine Corps and encountered some of the similar things that they did, but nothing at all close to what they had been through in the 40s. You know, I would remember things that they said, things they did, and use it to help me. One of the things they taught me was, you know, if you're focused on your mission, if you know what you want to do, nobody can stop you from doing that.
So you want to think that you step into the footsteps of these giants and the legacy for which they have left you, that you measure up. And so that inspiration is beyond words because of what they've done as a part of that fabric of creating American history.
And they told me that they're climbing up on my shoulders, but they did the work. They did the work. And I'm very proud of them.
It's the responsibility of the Marine Corps to anchor the story of Montford Point in the annals of the Marine Corps' rich history. Every Marine, from private to general, should know the history of the Montford Point Marines, who crossed the threshold to fight not only the enemy they were to know overseas, but that of racism and segregation in their very own country. Collectively, they paved the way for the many thousands of Marines of various backgrounds, men and women alike, who serve our nation today with honor, courage, and commitment.
One more short video. There'll be a brief pause, and then we'll have one more short video. It's 1 minute and 30 seconds. Then the gentleman will start speaking.
And finally, a part of history few Americans knew: the first black Marines risking their lives in war only to endure injustice when they returned, one of them saying he felt safer on the battlefield than here at home. So what happened today? Here's ABC's Bob Woodruff.
They came to Washington today with heads held high, the few, the proud. Beneath their worn faces, memories of valor in America's segregated past.
Even at 82 years of age today, I feel like a Marine.
Nearly 70 years after President Roosevelt ordered the Marines to accept black troops, the House voted unanimously today to award the Congressional Gold Medal, the nation's highest civilian honor, to our nation's first black Marines, those who trained here at Montford Point.
I shed some tears because it really hit me, and I just felt so humbled by it.
The Montford Marines proudly served our country in battles like Iwo Jima and Okinawa, sent in to clean up dangerous debris after the atomic bombs dropped in Japan. But back here at home, racism. White Marines trained at Camp Lejeune, while the black Marines weren't even allowed on the base unless guided by a white officer. No black officers existed.
We didn't have any officers to protect us. We got kicked, we got slapped, and other things. We couldn't do anything but just say yes, sir, and accept it.
Inspiration to those serving in their footsteps. And though most of the 19,000 Montford Point Marines have passed away, now their honor lives on.
Semper Fi.
Semper Fi.
Semper Fi.
Semper Fi.
Semper Fi. Always faithful. The motto of all Marines. Bob Woodruff, ABC News, New York.
Hopefully you all enjoyed the video and have a better understanding as to what these particular gentlemen went through and the reward that they received in the end, and how grateful they were for being awarded the Congressional Gold Medal this past June the 27th, 2012. Our job now is to keep the history alive. The Commandant of the Marine Corps have made it mandatory that the history of the Montford Point Marines be told to every Marine, be it enlisted and officer. It is a part of the curriculum with regards to the history. You heard of two distinct gentlemen that were the pillars for the young troops coming through, and that was Sergeant Major Hashmark Johnson and Sergeant Major Huff. Montford Point is no longer named Montford Point. It's named Camp Johnson now in honor of Hashmark Johnson. These gentlemen had the pleasure and the opportunity to be under his guidance and leadership. I would like to introduce each one. They'll get up, they'll speak. At the end of this, their presentation, we'll take questions, and also we'll probably ask questions because there will be a quiz at the end of this to make sure everybody was listening. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Lieutenant Colonel Joseph Carpenter. Please stand up and give him a warm round of applause. Podium, however you want to do it.
Okay. Well, I'll sit here with everybody. Good morning. And thanks for inviting us to be here to explain our history to you. I would like to start off first by saying, so many youngsters here, that I'd like to say that African Americans have served in every war this country has ever fought, and white Americans weren't always very happy about it either. And in the 19th century, they wouldn't even allow African Americans to enlist. And also during the Independence War, when America was fighting for, against England I get confused. During the Independence War, when President Washington was trying to get, President Washington denied enlisting African Americans during the Independence War until it was discovered that the white Americans weren't too interested in risking their lives for independence, and then, of course, George Washington did an about-face and ordered arming of the African Americans. And I'll skip down now to 1930. In the late 1930s, when America's involvement in a war that was waged in Europe seemed inevitable, and black and white men were being drafted into the armed forces, black men resented bitterly their exclusion from the nation's defense industries, government office, and combat-type military units. For example, in New York City, there were over 30,000 white defense workers, and of that number, only about 200 were African Americans, and those few were limited to such menial jobs as elevator operators, sweepers, and janitors. In the military, segregation was the official government policy, which was a carryover from the Civil War. The Army and Navy would accept enlistments of African Americans, but the United States Marine Corps refused to accept African Americans. And they were a white male institution up to that point, and they wanted to remain so. African American newspapers were reporting race riots and Jim Crow conditions in many of the military bases and camps. The Baltimore African American newspaper called for thousands of African Americans to desert rather than serve in military camps in the South. Leaders of major black organizations pleaded with and petitioned the federal government to meet its responsibility. On June the 1st, 1941, A. Philip Randolph, head of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Cars Porters Union, said that the government would not act on behalf of Negroes until it saw 10, 20, 50,000 Negroes on the White House lawn. Leaders of all the major organizations agreed to participate with A. Philip Randolph. And on June the 1st, 1941, it was announced that there would be a march on Washington of 50,000 Negroes. On July the 1st, 1941, it was announced that the Negroes would come into Washington to protest. Consequently, the federal government, when it realized that they could not afford to have an African American rebellion, President Roosevelt then issued this Executive Order 8802. Okay, I'm sorry. I always should talk. Okay, that President Roosevelt, on 25th of June, 1941, President Roosevelt issued Executive Order 8802, which banned discrimination, defense plans, government officers, and the armed forces because of race, creed, or national origin. The Marine Corps at that time said that Negroes had no place in the units he commanded, and that the Negro race was trying to break into an organization where it was not wanted. He said also that if he had to choose between 50,000 white Marines and 250,000 Negro Marines, he would choose the white Marines. The Secretary of the Navy then directed the Commandant of the Marine Corps to begin enlisting African Americans. As a result, the Commandant of the Marine Corps then established a headquarters Marine Corps board to study the integration of Negroes into the Marine Corps. The board recommended that Negroes be assigned to composite defense battalions, which included coastal artillery, anti-aircraft artillery, infantry, and tanks, and that these battalions be assigned to overseas base defense, which included coastal artillery, anti-aircraft artillery, infantry, and tanks. Recruiting began on June the 1st, 1941. The Marine Corps' initial quota was only 900 recruits, 200 each from the eastern and central parts of the country and 500 from the south. Recruiting began on June the 1st, 1942. However, throughout the war, a total of 19,168 African American recruits from all over the nation were shipped off to Montford Point, New River Camp in June, which was about 2 miles off of the main road in Jacksonville, North Carolina, and a very I want to say hostile, but that's not right. Anyway, it was an unimproved area with a lot of swamps, quicksand, mosquitoes, bears, and we had to deal with all of that when we first went there. And initially, all of the officers were white, and all of the drill instructors were white NCOs. But as fast as the African American NCOs could be trained, they replaced the white NCOs. There were 2 defense battalions established: the 51st and 52nd Defense Battalion. These battalions were deployed overseas, but neither saw combat. But the point I want to make, though, is that because of the commandant's attitude, he created a very hostile environment for us in the Marine Corps, as well as in the various cities, and particularly those in the South. We were harassed when we went south because the white persons there realized that the commandant didn't want us, and he wasn't going to really support us, and he didn't for a while. So we were actually at the mercy of the white drill instructors, as well as the police in the South, and in fact, and as well as Jim Crow laws. And myself, I'm from Washington, D.C. I was born in Washington, D.C. While we had some segregation, it just wasn't as demeaning as it was when you went south and faced the Jim Crow laws. And as a matter of fact, when I first went in, we were given a set of orders from Washington to go to Jacksonville, North Carolina. And so when we caught the train, and I'd never traveled trains south. I'd traveled north, but not south. So anyway, when they put us on a train, they put us in a car right behind the coal engine, behind the coal car. I didn't pay too much attention at that time because I traveled north, and I got on a train, never had a problem. So halfway to Rocky Mounts, where we were going to transfer from the train, halfway there, we decided we wanted to get something to eat, and we asked the conductor where was the dining car. And he immediately says, "That's what you guys, I think he said boys. He said, you boys can't go back there." So we said, "Why not?" I said, "We're hungry. We're Marines. We got government orders. We got government meal tickets, and we would like to eat." But he says, "Well, you're in the South now. This is Jim Crow law, which says you can't do that." So we decided we wouldn't argue with the conductor. So we said, "Well, when we get to Rocky Mount, we would get something to eat there," because we had left at about 7 o'clock in the morning and hadn't eaten anything. So anyway, when we get to Rocky Mount, being where we were situated on the train, which was right behind the coal car, and all of the other cars behind us were white, naturally. So when the train pulls into the station, our coach is way down the track, and all the whites are behind us. So when we turn and fall in behind the whites and walk with the whites, we walk to the station, to the train station. And so happened there was a policeman standing there, and then he immediately used the N-word and asked us where we thought we were going. And we really weren't paying too much attention. We were just following the crowd, basically. So we told him, we're Marines, we got meal tickets, and we'd like to get something to eat. And so he says we couldn't go there, and he used the N-word at us. So he told you guys go around the side. Well, we had to do that because that was my first time in Rocky Mountain. I had no idea where anything was. And we need to find where the bus station was, so we catch the bus to go from Rocky Mount to Jacksonville, North Carolina. So we go into the train station, the part of the train station that colored had to go into, and there was a sign that said colored on the side of the train station. So going in there, this was a narrow corridor, and I guess it was maybe about 20 feet long and maybe about 8 feet wide. And at the end of the corridor was a glass sliding window. So we went up to there, and we need to find out where the train was. We couldn't do it, where the bus was, we couldn't do anything else. So we went up there, but the waiters on the other side of the window there, of course, they were all white, and they were serving white people who were at that part of the station. So we waited, so finally we got one of the waiters' attention. And she ignored us there for a while. Then we irritated a little because we started getting persistent to find out, we wanted to find out where the bus station was anyway. So finally she comes over there, and again, she lays us out too because we disturbed her. And so we said, well, will you please tell us where the bus station is? And so she was good enough to tell us that. So we go to the bus station, and we run the same problem.